Go back to 1976 when Guinea played Morocco. Morocco walked off the field of play.
Quand j'ai appris, j'ai dit que normalement, non, c'est faux. Ce n'était pas vrai. Les Marocains ne sont pas sortis du stade après le but de Souleymane Chérif. Ils ne sont pas sortis du stade.
Imagine a major international football tournament where the champion was crowned without ever playing a final. Imagine a tournament hosted in a country on the brink of a brutal civil war where the roar of the stadium was entirely overshadowed by the echoes of political revolution. This is the story of the 1976 Africa Cup of Nations. A tournament defined by a bizarre format, a blood-stained political backdrop, and a decisive match that still sparks bitter debates half a century later. Following the Confederation of African Football's explosive 2026 ruling to strip Senegal of their AFCON title and award it to Morocco, the Guinean Football Federation officially petitioned the CAF to strip Morocco of their 1976 AFCON title. The accusation: a forgotten walkout, a refereeing controversy, and a double standard that has just been blown wide open by a modern-day scandal. When we think of the Africa Cup of Nations today, we picture high-stakes knockout football. The drama of the round of 16, the tension of penalty shootouts, and the ultimate spectacle of the grand final. But in 1976, CAF decided to tear up the rulebook. For the 10th edition of the tournament, hosted by Ethiopia, there would be no knockout stages, no semi-finals, no grand final. Instead, the champion will be decided by a mathematical war of attrition, a final round-robin group stage. It was a format inspired by the 1950 World Cup in Brazil, and it has never been used at AFCON since. But the bizarre structure of the tournament was only half the story. This wasn't just a football tournament. It was a sporting event held in the shadow of the Red Terror. To set the scene, we must rewind to September 1974. Ethiopia's long-reigning emperor, Haile Selassie, was overthrown in a military coup. The power vacuum was filled by a Marxist-Leninist military junta known as the DAG. By the time the 1976 Africa Cup of Nations kicked off on February 29, Ethiopia was a nation holding its breath. The DAG, increasingly falling under the hardline control of Mengistu Haile Mariam, had just instigated the K-Shaba, the Ethiopian Red Terror. This was a ruthless campaign of violent political repression aimed at crushing rebel groups and political opposition. Hosting the 10th edition of AFCON was a massive logistical and political gamble for the DAG. Ethiopia was a founding member of CAF, having previously hosted the tournament in 1962 and 1968. But this was the first major international event held in the country since the revolution. The junta wanted to use the tournament to project an image of stability and socialist progress to the rest of the continent. Behind the scenes, however, the country was fracturing. Armed resistance groups like the Eritrean People's Liberation Front and the Tigray People's Liberation Front were gaining momentum. Yet, against this volatile backdrop, 8 national teams arrived to play football. The qualified teams were the hosts Ethiopia, the defending champions Zaire, now DR Congo, Morocco, Guinea, Nigeria, Egypt, Sudan, and Uganda. They were about to step onto the pitch in a country where the stakes of life and death were playing out just beyond the stadium walls. If the political situation was complex, the tournament format was equally unorthodox. Prior to 1976, AFCON utilized a standard group stage followed by knockout semi-finals and a final. But for this edition, CAF introduced a radical change. The 8 teams were divided into 2 groups of 4. The top 2 teams from each group would advance, not to a semi-final, but to a second group stage. In this final phase, the 4 remaining teams would play a round-robin format where everyone plays everyone once. At the time, a win earned you 2 points, a draw earned you 1 point, and a loss got you 0. The team sitting at the top of the table after all matches were played would be crowned the champions of Africa. The official reasoning was to ensure that the best teams played more matches against each other, heightening the competition and generating more revenue and entertainment. It was the exact same approach used in the 1950 World Cup, the tournament famous for the Maracanazo, where Uruguay shocked Brazil in the final group match. But in practice, this format completely altered the tactical approach to the game. In a knockout final, you have to win. In a round-robin final group, you just have to do the math. And as we will soon see, this mathematical approach will lead to one of the most controversial climaxes in African football history. The first round of the tournament delivered immediate shocks. In Group A, played in Addis Ababa, the hosts Ethiopia were eliminated early, finishing third behind a dominant Guinea side and a resilient Egypt. Guinea, led by the lethal striker Mamadou Aliou Keita, who would go on to win the Golden Boot with 4 goals, looked unstoppable. Over in Dere Dawa for Group B, the defending champions, Zaire, completely collapsed. Just 2 years after representing Africa at the 1974 World Cup, Zaire finished dead last in their group. Instead, it was Morocco and Nigeria who progressed. Morocco, managed by Romanian coach Virgil Madarescu, were a tactical machine. They were spearheaded by their legendary captain, Ahmed Forres. Forres was a visionary striker, the reigning 1975 African Footballer of the Year, and he was on a mission. Morocco topped Group B after drawing 2-2 with Sudan, grinding out a 1-0 win over Zaire, and dismantling Nigeria 3-1. So the stage was set. The final 4 were decided: Egypt, Guinea, Morocco, and Nigeria. They all packed their bags and headed to the capital Addis Ababa for the final round-robin showdown. The final group stage began on March 9, 1976. Morocco struck first, securing a vital 2-1 victory over Egypt. Meanwhile, Guinea and Nigeria battled to a 1-1 draw. 2 days later, on March 11th, the teams took the pitch again. Morocco continued their relentless march, beating Nigeria 2-1. Guinea, knowing they had to keep pace, unleashed a spectacular attacking display to crush Egypt 4-2. Because a win was only worth 2 points, Egypt and Nigeria were mathematically eliminated from winning the title. It was a 2-horse race. Morocco sat on 4 points. Guinea sat on 3 points. And by a stroke of pure scheduling luck, the final match of the tournament was Morocco versus Guinea. It wasn't officially a final, but it was the ultimate decider. The parameters were brutally simple. Guinea had to win to claim their first ever AFCON title. Morocco, who held a 1-point advantage, only needed a draw. This slight imbalance in objectives would dictate the psychology of one of the most infamous matches in African history. On Sunday, March 14, 1976, 30,000 fans packed the stands in the Addis Ababa Stadium. From the opening whistle, Guinea played like a team possessed. They knew a draw was useless, so they threw men forward, utilizing their pace and physical dominance. Morocco, acutely aware that a goalless draw would hand them the trophy, played conservatively, absorbing the pressure. In the 34th minute, the Moroccan defense finally cracked. Guinean legend Sharif Suleiman found the back of the net to give Guinea a 1-0 lead. As it stood, the Sili National were the champions of Africa. Morocco was stunned. They had to attack, but Guinea controlled the midfield. The tension on the pitch boiled over. Tackles flew in as the game became incredibly physical. And then in the 66th minute, disaster struck for the Atlas Lions. Moroccan defender Abdallah Semet committed a harsh foul and was shown a straight red card. Morocco was down to 10 men, trailing 1-0, with less than 25 minutes left to save their tournament.
And what everyone is forgetting, and maybe the appeal board didn't take into account, there are precedents in this regard. Go back to 1976, when Guinea played Morocco. Morocco walked off the field of play. They then came back onto the field of play. It wasn't, the game wasn't abandoned.
And this is where the historical controversy takes center stage. According to historical accounts recently brought back into the spotlight by Raymond Hack, the former president of the CAF disciplinary board, the Moroccan national team staged a walkout during this match. Frustrated by a refereeing decision, officiated by Zambian referee Nairenda Chayu, the Moroccan players reportedly left the pitch in protest. But the game was not abandoned. The Moroccan players eventually returned to the field, and the referee allowed play to continue. Guinea continued to dominate possession. They looked destined to lift the trophy. Even the Moroccan captain, Ahmed Forres, would later admit that Guinea was the better team on the pitch that day. But football is a cruel and unpredictable game. In the 86th minute, just 4 minutes away from the final whistle, Morocco launched a desperate, sweeping counter-attack. The ball fell to Ahmed Baba Makru, who unleashed an absolute thunderbolt from a distance to make it 1-1. In the dying minutes of the game, Morocco snatched the equalizer. The Guinean players collapsed in despair with the final whistle blowing shortly after. Because of the round-robin format, the 1-1 draw meant Morocco finished with 5 points and Guinea finished with 4. Without winning the final match, Morocco were crowned the 1976 champions of Africa. The aftermath of the 1976 AFCON was a tale of two nations. For Morocco, it was a historic triumph. It remains, to this day, the only Africa Cup of Nations title the Atlas Lions have ever won. Ahmed Forrest was named the player of the tournament, cementing his legacy as one of North Africa's greatest ever footballers. But for Guinea, the 1976 tournament is an open wound. The Guinean press and fans felt robbed. A week after the tournament, the prominent magazine Afrique ran a headline that read, "La Guinée, les vrais champions d'Afrique," which translates to Guinea, the true champions of Africa. They had outplayed Morocco for 85 minutes of the decisive match. Yet, because of a mathematical technicality and a late equalizer, they went home empty-handed. The Confederation of African Football seemed to agree that the format lacked the definitive climax a major tournament needed, and the final group stage format was scrapped immediately. By the next tournament in 1978, AFCON returned to the traditional knockout semi-finals and final, and it has stayed that way ever since. As for the host nation, Ethiopia, the final whistle of the tournament offered no reprieve. The Red Terror escalated and the country plunged deeper into a devastating civil war that would last for over a decade, fundamentally altering the geopolitical landscape of the Horn of Africa. The 1976 Africa Cup of Nations is a bizarre, fascinating anomaly in football history. It is a story of a trophy won with a calculator, a red card that couldn't stop a champion, and a host nation masking a bloody revolution with a beautiful game. Fast forward to March 2026, the African football landscape is in absolute uproar. Following the 2025 AFCON, the CAF Appeals Board made a shocking ruling to strip Senegal of the 2025 AFCON title. Consequently, CAF awarded the 2025 title to the hosts, Morocco. And the irony was not lost on Guinea. Almost immediately, the Guinean Football Federation reportedly launched a formal appeal to CAF with a clear message, "Give us back our 1976 AFCON trophy." Guinea's argument is legally fascinating. They argue that if CAF is willing to retroactively punish Senegal for a walkout in 2025 and award the win to Morocco, then the exact same standard must be applied to Morocco's walkout against Guinea in 1976. However, Articles 82 and 84 of the current CAF regulations did not exist in 1976. In sports law, rules are rarely applied retroactively across decades, but this saga has ripped the band-aid off one of the sport's oldest controversies.
La toile, on a beaucoup entendu cette histoire d'une équipe marocaine en 1976, année où elle avait remporté son premier sacre continental. Et elle avait aussi, en finale, face à la Guinée, quitté le terrain pour contestation, c'est ça?
C'est ça. En fait, un ancien international guinéen interviewé par un confrère, Tanou Diallo, a confirmé le contraire. Il s'agit d'Ismaël Silla. Il avait près de 20 ans à l'époque. C'était un milieu de terrain. Nous l'avons joint par téléphone.
Quand j'ai appris, j'ai dit que normalement, non, c'est faux. Ce n'était pas vrai. Les Marocains ne sont pas sortis du stade après le but de Souleymane Chérif. Ils ne sont pas sortis du stade. Et on a continué le jeu jusqu'à ce qu'ils ont égalisé vers la fin, à 88e, 89e minute. Le match, ça s'est déroulé normalement. Il n'y a pas eu d'incident, rien.
Enter Ismaël Silla, affectionately known as Eusebio. Silla was a key Guinean international who was on the pitch during that legendary 1976 clash. If anyone had a reason to validate this rumor and help his country claim a retroactive AFCON title, it was him. But when Silla sat down for an interview with the French network TV5 Monday in March 2026, he didn't feed into the hysteria. Instead, Silla threw cold water on Raymond Hack's allegations, firmly disputing that the Moroccan national team walked off the pitch during the 1976 final. An eyewitness, a direct opponent, and a Guinean football legend completely dismantled the narrative. Silla confirmed that the match flowed normally and that Ahmed Makrua's 86th minute equalizer happened during regular uninterrupted play. There was no 15-minute protest, there was no walkout. Following Silla's explosive interview, the House of Cards collapsed. The Guinean Football Federation was forced to step in and clear the air. They released a firm statement strongly refuting the claims, describing the reports of a Moroccan walkout as false and lacking any official basis. The federation also dismissed the speculation that they were seeking to challenge the outcome of the 1976 match, clarifying that no such legal action had been initiated. This entire saga highlights a growing danger of misinformation online. The CAF ruling regarding Senegal resulted in the invention of a historical injustice to balance the scales. It shows how easily a lie can travel across the continent before the truth even has a chance to put its boots on. If it was true, do you think Guinea would have deserved to be retroactively awarded the 1976 AFCON title? Or is 50 years too late to change the history books?